Hello and welcome to a new colour along video. Today I'm colouring from this beautiful Country Charm colouring book by Creative Havens, and I've chosen this cute little page with the washing line. It's kind of a garden scene, and I'm using the Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils. So I'm starting off with the sky in the background, and I'm using the light cobalt turquoise, and I'm just colouring it very lightly in small circular motions, and I'm making it stronger to the very top and then lighter down towards the horizon. Next I'm starting on the grass area. So there's like two sections of grass. There's the grass in front of the picket fence, and then there's the grass behind. So first of all I'm just colouring the section behind, which is all the background fields, and I'm starting off with the earth green, and I'm just doing a light layer of that all over the grass. But as it gets towards the little top areas of each little grass mound, I'm fading that out. And then on the little faded parts, on the little top areas, I'm doing a light layer of the light green. So it's just a very pale layer. It's not I'm not pressing hard or anything. And then I'm going to the bottom of each grass area with the juniper green, and I'm putting a layer towards the bottom of each little section. Now I'm moving on to those background trees, and I'm using the earth green yellowish, and I'm just colouring kind of to the bottom and the left area. And now I've got the light yellow ochre and I'm covering that area that I've just coloured in the green, but bringing it a little bit further up. But you can see I'm leaving a white area to the top right, and I'm leaving that little bit blank. And then I'm just colouring that little bit in with cadmium yellow lemon. And now I'm darkening the left hand side and the underneath with burnt sienna. So now I'm onto the background trees, and I'm just colouring these in random autumn colours. So I'm starting here with the earth green yellowish, and then as you can see I add a little bit of the lemon yellow to some of the trees, and I add a little bit of green gold to some of them, and I add a little bit of light cadmium red to some of them as well, and I just kind of randomise that. But I'm always trying to make them kind of a lighter colour to the top right and then darker to the underneath and the left, and that gives them a little bit of definition. Although I don't want them too highly detailed because they're in the background, so I'm not trying too hard with them. Okay, so now I'm onto the larger tree in the background, and I'm using light yellow ochre, and I'm doing just a thin layer all over the whole of the tree with that first of all. Then I'm using the light cadmium red to the top right, just adding a little hint of red in there. Next I'm adding some green gold over to the left hand side of the red parts, and I'm kind of doing it in a squiggly motion just to give a little bit of a texture look to the tray. And now I'm using burnt sienna to the underneath bottom parts and kind of over to the left hand side, same as with the other little trees that I showed you. And I'm just taking each section on its own, making it darker to the bottom left, lighter to the top right, but also a little bit of red to the top right of this particular tray as well, as though the leaves have gone gold and then they're turning red. And now you can see here I'm making the bottom parts even darker. And I felt as though I couldn't get it quite dark enough, so now I'm using the walnut brown just to really darken those bottom areas, and it really makes the trees look a lot more rounded. And then I decided to add a little bit of this walnut brown to the very bottoms and just kind of the bottom left of these trees as well. Now onto the little background houses, and I'm just using cold grey 5. I've coloured the roofs in with that, added a little bit of shading underneath some of the roofs and just some little shaded areas to the doorways and things like that. And now I'm onto the tree trunks, and I'm using burnt sienna, and I'm just putting a thin layer of burnt sienna on here, and then I go in with a blender pencil and kind of spread that colour out. And now to the left hand side of all the little trunks, I'm using walnut brown. And then I'm finishing off with green gold to the right hand side of all the little trunks. Now I'm onto the main tray and I'm using the walnut brown. I'm just doing kind of a faint layer to start with, and I'm having it darker over to the left, and then I'm just fading it towards the right, and I'm darkening the underside of the branches and the holes. I forgot what they're actually called, them little knots, them holes on the tree trunk. I've totally forgot what their names are. And now I'm adding a layer of bistre to the whole thing. Just a light layer. And now I'm experimenting with this Caran d'Ache luminance white pencil. I'm just trying to add some kind of highlighted areas to the tray, but it doesn't really work out very well. So I ended up just going over that with the green gold, but then I didn't really like the green gold on the tree trunk so much. I just didn't think the colour looked right. So I did end up covering most of that up, which you will see in a minute. So now I'm going in with the walnut brown and darkening those holes in the tray. And I also darken the darkest areas over on the left hand side, and then I end up, as I said before, bringing that colour over and doing a thin layer over the top of the green gold, because that green gold, it just didn't look right. It looked too mustardy, like a mustardy colour on that tray. Okay, so now I'm onto the little birds, and I'm just colouring them in as little robin redbreasts. So I'm using the light cadmium red for the breast area, and then I'm using the bistre just very, very lightly over the rest of the bird, and then I use the walnut brown to the base area of the wings and the underneath of the bird to give it a little bit of definition. Okay, so now onto these socks on the washing line. So I'm using Helio Turquoise on this. And I'm just colouring in the edges, the little heel. And then I'm colouring the alternative stripes on this little lattice effect part of the sock. And then just darkening some of those little squares. And then I'll just go over the rest with a layer of the light cobalt turquoise. Now I'm onto these denim shorts, and I'm doing a layer of light ultramarine first of all, because I was intending on colouring those patches on the front a different colour, but then I ended up covering the whole thing in light ultramarine as well, because I decided just to have it look like it was a pair of denim shorts with studs on the front. Now I'm just using the Delft blue to add some shaded areas, mainly just around the edges of things, and it gives more of a rounded look. Now I'm onto this top, and I just wanted it to look like a kind of cream top, so I'll go over it with a warm grey 1 to start with, and it doesn't really do much, so I then end up going over it with the ivory pencil. And then with this, I think it's a warm grey 2, I'll colour the little bottom section in with that, and some of the edges of the rest of the top. And then I didn't think that it was dark enough, those edge pieces, so I end up using the warm grey 3. And I'm using black for the bow in the middle, but I'm just doing a light layer, and then I colour the edges in a darker black, as you will see. I'm just kind of trying to define the edges of the top as well there. Okay, now onto these trousers, and I'm going to have them as red. I'm going to make them a pair of red trousers. So this is a bit tricky actually, this, because I put lots of different layers on of different stuff, and I'm kind of experimenting a bit myself as I'm going along. So that first little section, which is the inside of the trousers, I coloured that in cinnamon. And then I do a light layer of rose carmine over the whole of the trousers. And now I'm using dark red, and I'm adding all the shaded areas. I'm kind of mapping out where they're going to be. So down the left hand side and in kind of all the creases. And now I'm using the deep scarlet red, and I'm kind of going over the top of the deep red and fetching that scarlet red like further out, but I'm kind of trying to leave some highlighted areas as well that I don't want to be too dark. And now I'm using the light cadmium red, which is more orangey, because I felt as though the trousers were looking a bit too pinky red. It wasn't the type of red that I wanted. So I kind of do a light layer over most of the trousers here with this light cadmium red, but I'm just going lightly over those highlighted areas. And now I'm experimenting with this Caran d'Ache blender, and it worked really well, but it's very, very waxy, and it was leaving tons of wax bloom that I kept having to blow out of the way. But it's quite waxy and kind of greasy and slidey. It's a little bit easier to use than the other blender pencils, but you just got to be careful of that wax bloom. Now I'm going in with a little bit more of the light cadmium red to give more of a orangey tint. And then back in with the dark red to add more shading into the shaded areas that I've already put down before. And I decided to go over that cinnamon as well on the inside of the trousers with the deep red. I think that looks a bit better. So now I've got a kneaded eraser and I'm just rubbing out some of the highlighted areas just to lift that back out because the colour was a little bit too intense in those areas. And now I'm using that Caran d'Ache white pencil and I'm actually adding more lighter areas into the highlights. I'm actually really impressed with this white Caran d'Ache pencil. It goes over the colours really nicely. It must be quite opaque. Okay, so I'm going to leave it here and I'm going to do this in 2 parts. So everything I've used will be listed below in the description as always. Thanks for watching, and part 2 should be out hopefully the day after this one is out.